So in this video, what I'd like to show you is what's inside of this mysterious gray box that we're aiming the light at. So if I turn it around in the experimental side, you see there's just a small hole in the front, and it's labeled RCA 934 photo tube. So if you're so motivated, you could Google something like that and get the data sheet on it and check it out. So there's a hole there, so let's just see what's inside. So if I sort of turn it over, we see that we have some connections on the side, the anode, the cathode, and the ground. The cathode is generally referred to as the metal that the light's going to hit to emit the electrons, and the anode is going to collect those electrons, say, to form a photocurrent as needed. And of course, there's ground here to get a good zero potential for the whole operation. So if I pull the lid off, nice empty side over there, but what you see on the sort of the key active side here is this glassy thing, and that's sort of the tube that it's all in. Of course, if you want to study something like electrons being emitted from a metal, you would definitely have to do something about the air in the way. So the cathode and the anode are all inside of this evacuated glass tube here. And if you look very carefully at it, sort of this grayish thing that you see there, that's sort of in the shape of a cup. I don't know how well you can see it on the video. Sort of in the shape of a cup or a parabola. That's the cathode. And so as the light comes in through the hole here, as if you put the thing back together like this, if it was like this, you can see that the light's just going to go in and just strike that grayish material in the back there, and that's the cathode. That's where the electrons are going to supposedly jump off of if the energy of the wavelength can meet or exceed the band gap or the work function that holds the electrons in that metal. So it isn't so clear. I'm not really seeing anything else very illuminating on this, so I pulled up the data sheet myself. And this is sort of what the data sheet would look like then. So what they're telling you here is indeed this circular U-shaped material in there is the cathode. That's what the light's going to hit. And 2 is the anode right there. And of course 1 is the circle here is the whole evacuated glass tube in there. And they just show you the connections. Of course, that looks like pin 1 is not connected at all, and pins 2 and 3 are the anode and the cathode. So that's sort of what we get inside there. So if you can't really see what's going on inside, just trust the data sheet as always. So that's really essentially all that's in there. You see the connections are pretty simple. There's only a couple wires coming out, and indeed one of the pins coming off there is unconnected, as noted in the data sheet. So we only have connections to the cathode and the anode, which are so labeled on the front there. So that's about it. That's what goes on inside the box here. So we put it back together. Again, when you aim light at this little hole here, the light goes in, you can hit that photocathode and start the process of ejecting electrons in sort of a good manner with all the air evacuated out. And if the electrons can make it over to the anode, that's going to constitute the photocurrent that can happen. So this thing can complete a circuit and can sort of sustain a current running through it as long as light is hitting it. And what we do with the stopping potentials, we apply the potential across the anode and the cathode to try to stop that current from happening. Then we know that we've sort of met exactly the work function of the electrons. But anyway, that's what's inside the silver box.